when a person develops enough inner awakeness, inner awareness, inner focus, that they are ready to deal with the baggage that they've accumulated throughout their life. And this baggage comes from many reasons, from well-meaning parents or ill-meaning parents who have lectured or forced or controlled, from friends and peer pressure, from that one thing that somebody said when you were 12 that just crushed you entirely, from relationships that have not done well, from things that have happened in life or in business. Am I catching it, most of it? So all of these things happen, and we go on because we are programmed to go on. But some of them have a really big effect, and we don't really let them process through, especially when we are younger or weaker or less self-awakened. And so what happens is when you develop enough awakeness and energy, now I'm getting to the point, when you develop enough awakeness and inner energy, one of them will surface. Or you will notice a pattern of thinking or a pattern of reacting within yourself that you've done forever, but now it's come to your attention. Along with that attention, you receive energy. And that energy comes in the package of frustration, anger, fear, distress, a charge in your gut. Am I covering it? Yeah, and that energy is the energy that is getting your attention. It's like the divine phoning you and saying, ring, 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 ring. And that is the feeling of that telephone ringing. So you could just say, I'm not answering, and go on with your life. And then it'll keep coming up. You'll keep feeling that charge. Or you could say, oh, it's the beloved calling. And I finally have enough energy to deal with this, and it's coming in the energy of this phone call, this call from within. So I'm telling you the way I think about it. You can interpret and make your own. Some way or another, you are being drawn to a habit, to a pattern, to a reactive structure, to a way that you compensate for the way things look to you. Somehow you're being drawn. Then the question is, now what? This is where, I noticed yesterday we didn't talk about those wings of independence and indifference when we were summing up. But this is where they really come in handy, because then you can step back and look at this as something that's not you, as a pattern. And I find looking at it as a pattern or a structure or a residual energetic experience, for me, is very helpful, because I'm no longer identifying it as me. Then I'm saying, okay, I notice that this is here. Am I making sense so far? So once I notice that it's there, then what I do, depending on how intense it is I either just turn my attention towards it, because sometimes it's no big thing. It's the noticing that's the biggest thing. And I like to use the practice of presence. Shahabuddin, he also reminds us that we have the practice of breath. You can send the breath not to the thought itself, but to the place where you feel the feeling of it in your body. I give this example often. I'm glad that it doesn't happen anymore. But my husband and I, we used to have this habit that it would be time to pay the bills. He would say something about money. I would fly into a rage. He would say, there you go, playing your tape again. And I would just flip out completely. if I wasn't completely flipped out before. And then I'd storm away. And this would happen every time it was time to pay the bills. You can imagine how exciting our life was around the first of the month. This is real. And so I went on a 10-day retreat, and during my retreat, I was being present to my heart. I was being present to all this stuff. It never once occurred to me that he might have been reporting what was actually happening, what was really going on. I came back from the retreat. The first of the month came around, and because I had been practicing being present to every day, I just was present to my body, then the mental, emotional domain, the mental domain. I got used to it over time because I was doing this training in the Raphael light work, and it was one of Himayat's practices. And I figured, I'm a scientist, I have nothing to lose. I'll just do this every day, just in case it works. I really had never felt that anything specific was happening, but I came back from this 10-day retreat. It wasn't a Raphael light work retreat. And it was the first of the month. The talk about the bills came up. I flew into a rage. Sarmad said, "There you go, playing your tape." And it occurred to me, what if he's right? What if he's right? And I just stopped the whole conversation right there. I said, I've just come off retreat. It's occurred to me that this charge that I feel every time we have this conversation is really intense, and I'm wondering if you're right, and I'm going to have to excuse myself. And I went into the bedroom, closed the door, sat down, and turned my attention to this charge. And I realized it felt bigger than my life. It was so big. So then I didn't know what to do. So out of desperation, I called upon the divine. I called upon God. I called upon that boundless source of healing. And I said, look, if this is you showing me something, I need your help. I can't do it alone. And what I did was take hand with the divine and let the divine glance shine upon this that seemed bigger than my life. The first time I did it, I figured it was enough to just ask. But then, every day, I came back 3-4 times a day, sat down, remembering where the charge was. You don't have to feel the charge in the moment to remember where it's located. And kept going back, taking hand with God, being present to the place. One day, not too far, it didn't take long, it just took a few days. I again attuned to the divine, and then I turned my attention to this location, and it was not bigger than my life anymore. It was a location in my body that was very intense. And so over a period of time, it took months, it did not take days for it to work itself out. I never really found out. I had this realization at one point that I was afraid that there wouldn't be enough, that somehow there wasn't enough in my life, and that's what the real issue was. But that didn't make it go away. That was just a momentary realization that had to do with this huge charge that had affected my whole life. Now we talk about the bills and, yada, yada, yada. It's okay. It's just one more thing that we do. But occasionally something will come up, and it's not as intense as that. And sometimes, something will come up about money, and we'll have to talk about it again. And he'll say to me, where are you at? What's happening? Is this about that same thing? And I can look and ask myself, is there something there I need to tend to? All of us have these things within us. I picked a really big thing because sometimes a big example is a good one. But everyone has these places within us where we are actually being ruled in our lives, and we don't know why. We don't know what's ruling us. This is, Mersha talks about the art of personality. The art of personality. Isn't it interesting he calls it the art and not the science? So if you find that there are things in you that something happens and you have a big charge on that, you could turn your attention to that location, that physical location. Turn towards the divine. Take hand with the divine. And let your glance, let it not just be your glance, but the divine glance, the divine source of healing that is touching that location. And see what happens. We are not stuck in the shell that we have created to survive. We can break out of it. I do want to say that every once in a while, as you do this, you might feel fear. And I have made fear my friend and decided that that fear is God's way of saying to me, go slow. And so it's not that I run away, but rather I answer, and I answer that place in me that created this crusty place in order to survive. And I say, I'll go slow, it's okay, I don't need to push ahead, I'll take a break now. And then I come back later. Sometimes I offer those things within me a homeopathic dose of presence because that's all I can handle. Other times, I'll sit for 10 or 15 minutes and be present to something because it seems okay. And I stop when I'm tired of it or when I feel a shift.